Chapter 13. A Few Figures. A moment later, we were sitting on a sofa in the living room. With the cigar on my lips, Captain Nemo before my eyes. A sketch that gave the plans, cuts, and elevation of the Nautilus. Then he begins his description. In these terms, here, Mr. Aronnax, the various dimensions of the boat that carry you. It is a cylinder, very elongated to buconic. It affects substantially the shape of a cigar, shape already adopted in London in several constructions of the same kind. The length of this cylinder, head in head, is exactly 70 meters, and its beauty at its largest width, and 8 meters. It is therefore not built quite to the 10th as your steamers of great walk. But these lines are long enough, and it flowed long enough, that the water moved easily and does not oppose its walk. These two dimensions allow you to obtain by a simple calculation the surface of the Nautilus, 1,011 square meters, and 45 hundredths its volume, 15 centimeters squared, and 2/10, which is to say, fully submerged. It moves or weighs 1,500 cubic meters or barrel. When I made the plans of this ship, intended for underwater navigation, I wanted that in equilibrium in the water, it plunged 9/10, and that it emerged from a 10th only. Consequently, it had to move under these conditions. That 9/10 of its volume is 1,356 cubic meters and 48 hundredths. That is to say, to weigh only this same number of barrels. I had therefore not to exceed this weight by building it according to the aforementioned dimensions. The Nautilus consists of two hulls, one inside the other, outside joining it by T-shaped irons, which gives it an extreme rigidity, as a cellular block. If it was full, its border cannot give air by itself, but not by the tightening of the rivets, and the homogeneity of its construction, due to the perfect assembly of materials, allows it to challenge the most violent mothers. These two shells are made of steel sheet, whose density with respect to water and the 7/8. The first is not less than 5 centimeters thick and weighs 394 tons, 96 hundredths. The second shell, the high keel of 50 centimeters and wide of 25, weighing alone 62 tons. The machine, the ballast, the various accessories and layout, the interior partitions and hatches have a weight of 961 tons, 62, which added to the 394 tons and 96 hundredths form the total required of 1,356 and 48 hundredths is understood. When the Nautilus is afloat in these conditions, it emerges from a 10th gold. If I have arranged tanks of a capacity equal to this 10th, or with a capacity of 150 tons and 72 hundredths, and if I have filled it with water, the boat then moving 15,107 tons, or the weight will be completely submerged. This is what happens, Mr. Professor. These tanks exist first in the lower parts of the Nautilus. I open taps, it fills, and the boat, sinking, comes to flower the surface of the water. Well, Captain, but we then arrive at the real difficulty, that you can flower the surface of the ocean. I understand it, but lower by diving below this surface, your underwater device does not meet a pressure and therefore undergo a thrust from above and must be evaluated atmosphere by 30 feet of water, or about 1 kilogram per square centimeter. Perfectly, sir. So unless you fill the Nautilus in full, I do not see how you can train it within the liquid masses, Mr. Professor, replied Captain Nemo. We must not confuse the static with the dynamics. without which one exposes oneself to serious errors. There is very little work to spend to reach the low regions of the ocean, because the bodies have a tendency to become foundry. Follow my reasoning. I listened to you, Captain. When I wanted to determine the increase in weight that must be given to the Nautilus to immerse it, I had to worry only about the reduction in volume that seawater is proven as its layers become deeper and deeper. It is obvious, answered, not absolutely incompressible. It is at least very little compressible indeed, according to the most recent calculations. Is not that this reduction, 436, 10 million yen per atmosphere, or per every 30 feet of depth, is it to go to 1,000 meters? I take into account, then, the reduction of the volume under a pressure equivalent to that of a column of water of 1,000 meters, i.e., under a pressure of 100 atmosphere. This reduction will then be 436 100,000ths. I should therefore increase the weight so as to weigh 1,013 tons, 77 hundredths, instead of 1,507 tons of tenth. The increase will consequently be only if tonneau 57 hundredths only Mr. Aronnax, and the calculation is easy to check, or I have additional tanks capable of embarking without barrel. I can therefore go down to considerable depths when I want to rise to the surface and flare flush music, that the electricity alone could give me this pile. To say, Captain Nemo, I repeat to you, sir, that the dynamic power of my machines is almost infinite. The pumps of the Nautilus have a prodigious force, and you must have seen it when their column of water rushed like a torrent on the Abraham Lincoln. Besides, I use the additional tanks only to reach average depths of 1,500 to 2,000 meters, and this in order to spare my devices. Also, when the fantasy takes me to visit the depths of the ocean, 2 or 3 places below its surface, I use longer maneuvers, but no less infallible. The few captains asked me. This naturally leads me to tell you how this maneuver, the Nautilus, I'm eager to take it to govern this boat on starboard too. Approach to evolve in a horizontal plan of an ordinary rudder with wide saffron fixed on the back of the stamp, and that a wheel and gliders fancy. But I can also move the Nautilus from bottom to top and from top to bottom in a vertical plane by means of 2 inclined planes attached to these flanks on its center of buoyancy plane, mobile, able to take all positions, and which are maneuvered from the inside by means of a powerful lever. These planes are. They inclined the Nautilus according to the arrangement of this inclination, and under the thrust of its propeller, where sinks along a diagonal to the elongated sky that suits me, or rises along this diagonal. And even if I want to return more quickly to the surface, I embrace the lilies, and the pressure of the waters makes rise vertically the Nautilus, like a balloon which rises rapidly in the air, and swells. Bravo, Captain McCreedge. But how can the helmsman follow the route that you give him? In the middle of the waters, the helmsman is placed in a glass cage that protrudes from the upper part of the hull of the Nautilus, and that garnishes towards the anti-tilly worms, capable of resisting such pressures perfectly. The crystal, fragile to the impact, offers, however, a considerable resistance in experiments of fishing with electric light made in 1864 in the middle of the North Seas. We have seen plates of this material, under a thickness of 7 millimeters, only resist a pressure of 16 atmospheres, while letting
through powerful heat radius, which distributes to him this unevenly.
The heat or the worms which I use have not less than 21 centimeters at their center.
That is to say 30 times this thickness,
admitted Captain Nemo.
But finally to see it is necessary that light to cast the darkness. And I ask myself, the darkness of the waters behind the helmsman's cage is placed a powerful electric reflector, whose rays illuminate the sea a half-mile of distance. Bravo, 3 times bravo, Captain. I now explain this phosphorescence of the alleged in Arvel, which has so intrigued the sentences scientists about it. I will ask you if the collision of the Nautilus, it is Scotia, which had such a great impact, was the result of a chance meeting, purely fortuitous. Sir, I was sailing 2 meters under the surface of the waters when the shock occurred. I saw that it had no unfortunate result. No, sir, but when at your meeting with the Abraham Lincoln, sir, I am angry for one of the best navies of this brave American Navy. But I was attacked, and I had to defend myself. However, I had to put out of regatta of state of my knights, will not be embarrassed to repair its damage to the nearest port. Commander, but shout, I was convinced it is really a wonderful boat, that your Nautilus. Yes, sir, the professor answered with real emotion. Captain Nemo and I love it, as the flesh of my flesh. If everything is danger on one of your ships, subjected to the chance of the ocean, if on this sea the first impression is the feeling of the abyss, as the Dutchman Jansen so well said below and aboard a Nautilus, the heart of man has nothing to fear any more deformation, because the double hull of this boat to the rigidity of the iron, no rigging that the roll or pitch fatigue, no sail that the wind door, no boiler that the steam tears, no fire to fear, because this device is made of coal and not wood, is exhausted since the electricity and its mechanical agent, no encounter to fear, since it is only sailing in the deep waters. No storm to brave, since he finds a few meters below the waters. The absolute tranquility, here is Here is the ship, by excellent. And if it is true that the engineer is more confident in the building than the builder, and the builder more than the captain himself, understand, so with it abandonment, I rely on my Nautilus, since I am at the same time the captain, the builder, and the engineer. Captain Nemo spoke with eloquence, catching the fire of his gaze. The passion of his gesture transfigured him. Yes, he liked his opinion as a father loves his child. But an indiscreet question perhaps arise naturally, and I cannot restrain myself from making it to him. So, you are engineer? Captain Nemo. Yes, he studied, sir. He told me, Paris to New York, from the time I was a resident of the continents of the earth. But how could you build in secret this admirable Nautilus? Each of these pieces, Mr. Aronnax, arrived to me from a different point of the globe, and under a destination disguised his keel was forged at Le Creusot. His propeller shaft at Peat and Company of London, the plates of his hull at Lead of Liverpool, his propeller at Scott of Glasgow. Its reservoirs were manufactured by Cail and Company of Paris, his machine by Krupp in Prussia, his spur in the workshops of Motala in Sweden. These instruments of precision at Art Brother of New York etc. And each of these suppliers received my plans, or various names. But take these pieces, thus manufactured. It was necessary to mount them, Mr. Professor. I had established my workshops on a desert island in the ocean. There my workers, that is to say my companions, I instructed and trained, and I completed our Nautilus. Then, the completed operation. The fire destroyed any trace of our passage on this islet that I would have blown up if I had been able. Then it is allowed me to believe that the cost of this building is excessive, Mr. Aronnax. An iron ship costs 11,125 francs, partners or etc. The Nautilus in gauge 15,100. It therefore amounts to 1,687,000 francs, or 2 million, including its arrangement, or 4 or 5 million, with the works of art and collections it contains. A last question, Captain Nemo celebrates, Mr. Professor. You are therefore rich to infinity, sir, and I could, without hesitation, pay the 10 billion debts of France. I was looking at the bizarre character who spoke to me thus abused, he of my credulity.